How are you?
I'm good, Tom. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for being with us. How are you feeling now that the movie's out?
I feel listen, I'm really excited about it because the whole purpose of me putting on all this stuff and doing this again was to make people laugh. So if that's what's happening, then I'm all for it.
How did it feel when you put it all on again?
It's old hat, man. It's like putting on old clothes. I've been doing it so long, I fall right into it.
So a couple of years ago, you said you were definitely done with Madea. You did a farewell tour and everything. Take a listen to this. This is a clip where you sort of announced your change of heart.
Oh no, let's hear it.
Tyler Perry saying, "This is Madea saying I'm coming back and I'm on Netflix. I can't wait to take it so nice out. Damn it, hey!" We need to laugh, man. Too much is going on in the country. We need to laugh. So I was done, but I wasn't. But she's coming back. Madea, I am with it. I'm here. I am.
I love to hear the sort of conflict between you and Madea in your own head. You know,
It sounds like two people talking. Really. It's all me. All me. Yeah.
how much does she live with you?
She doesn't. Now, when she's not on screen or on stage, she's in a box somewhere in the corner at the studio. So that's her life.
She's not. Her presence is not somewhere with you all the time.
No, absolutely not. But the spirit of who she is a part of, as my mother and my aunt. That's who she came from. So those women are with me all the time for sure.
I wanted to talk about the appearance of Mrs. Brown in the movie. And I mean, so I should point out that I'm from, if you can't tell from the accent, I'm from sort of an Irish part of Canada. I'm from Newfoundland and Labrador. There's a lot of Irish media consumed there and English media. And Mrs. Brown is absolutely ginormous, massive. And Brendan O'Carroll plays Mrs. Brown, this, kind of cult figure in Irish and English media. And I read something interesting that when you found out about Brendan's story and Mrs. Brown's story, you saw a parallel with your own.
Yeah, we started around the same time, actually. I was in America, he was in Europe, and he started doing stage plays. I started doing stage plays, and then went to television, and I was shooting Brain on Fire, and the director, Gerard, he said to me, "Hey, have you heard of Mrs. Brown?" I was like, "No." So he sent me clips from YouTube. I'm like, "Whoa, we're doing the same thing." So I reached out to him. I was like, we got to find something to do together. And he was like, "Sure, let's make it happen." And the timing worked out, and our schedules worked out, and he came and he nailed it.
What was it like to see, because it feels like and I do want to talk about this a little bit, someone who sort of forged their own path against all odds in American media and in American entertainment. What was it like to see someone who maybe you could relate to on their journey?
100%. I'm telling you, so many parallels in our careers that I thought, wow, like I could start a sentence and he could finish it. Well, I did this and then I did that. And then I was on this arena and he was like, I was in this arena and you're going to go here. And I went there. So it was just watching our lives and how, who knew these two men, playing old grandmas would be what it has become for either of us.
Okay, talk to me about bringing current events into Medea's world.
What I've often done is use laughter as the anesthetic so that we can get to some serious issues, and to bring these moments in. I didn't want to make fun of them, but I did want to address them in a certain way. And my favorite part, as we talk about police and defunding the police in America, there is a moment where Madea says, I don't know all the answers, but I know it's not going to help until we start talking to each other. Not everybody's running to their own corners. So I'm hoping that some of these things resonate with people for sure.
Laughter is an anesthetic. I love that. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, ever since I've been doing the plays, I've been talking about very serious subject matters, from child sexual abuse to trauma to divorce, suicide, from the early 90s. And this was a time where a lot of those things people weren't talking about. But I would disarm the audience so much with the laughter. And then the last 20 minutes, if you look at any of the videos of the plays, the last 20 minutes or so, Medea's in a chair and just speaking wisdom of education, of these things that I've learned about how to deal with, how to move through. So the laughter has always been that for me.
I mean, it's amazing. It's something we've been talking a lot about on this show as we've tried to navigate how to do like an arts show during the past couple of years, is kind of looking at what art can do that a news headline can't do.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely right.
And and if you think about like when you started this thing, I mean, more than 20 years ago, I mean, she existed before, well, President Donald Trump, not before Donald Trump himself, before Black Lives Matter, before the pandemic, before you became a head of a studio. How has the past 20 years changed Madea?
I've tried to keep her pretty consistent to what she's been all along because women of that age or just older people, when they settle in, they're settled in. They're not changing very much. So I tried to keep it very close. But I think this movie is when I pushed it the furthest, with her having more opinions on more things. So I just wanted to say something. I think I'm here.
I suppose, like, how did that? If you wanted to push it as far as you can in this movie. What do I want to say here now? How was that for you writing it? How does that change the way you write it? Or how does that change the way you feel when you're writing it?
I felt very free. It felt very freeing, and it was also very terrifying because to push her to a place where she hadn't gone and to see how the audience would react to that was a bit different for me. But it's not so far off that she's a different person. So it's okay. I'm excited about it.
I wanted to get a little bit. I mean, you talked earlier about how you were able to talk about hard stuff and challenging stuff through the lens of humor and through Madea's kind of speaking directly to the audience. I find your own story really incredible, and I think about it a lot sort of in my day-to-day. But I want to be cautious that this is your story, and I'm not asking you to talk about anything you don't necessarily want to talk about. I know that things weren't easy for you growing up. I wonder if you could talk to me as much as you want to about that and how that might have led to you wanting to tell stories.
I don't know if it led to me wanting to tell stories, just from growing up in a very abusive situation at home and getting to a place in very early on where, not wanting to live because I thought it was just going to be completely darkness my entire life. But the thing that made me the most lean toward telling story the most, I should say, would be watching my mother's reaction when I would imitate some of her friends to make her laugh after she had a horrible fight with my father. So I learned the power in making people laugh and feel good. And I think that is where a lot of this came from, just realizing that I wanted her to feel good. That's why it's no surprise that my audience in the beginning were largely Black women, and they really related to what I was saying because subconsciously, my first 10 movies, I was talking to my mother.
And it was like an episode of Oprah you watched that inspired you to write down some of these stories?
Yeah, in the early 90s, she was doing a show about journaling, and she said it was cathartic to write things down, and I had to look up the word cathartic, public school system, and once I did, I started writing things down and using different characters' names because in my house there was no privacy, and if anybody found it, I didn't want them to know what I was talking about. So a friend of mine read it and said, "Man, this is a really good play," and that's where it all started for me.
Was it cathartic?
100%. And I didn't know how cathartic it would be to actually get it out and get it on paper and just have it expressed, but 100%.
And, in the early days of, this massive success that you have right now, times were lean, you just stories about you living in your car, which was a Geo Metro, by the way. We had a Geo Metro. I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
And
6'6", imagine.
Yeah, I don't know how you sleep in a Geo Metro at all.
I bought another one, and I bought one, and I have it here at the studio, and I drive it around every now and then just to remind me of how far I've come.
What do you mean? You bought another one just to remind you of how far you've come?
Yeah, I bought another Geo Metro, and I have it here at the studio, and every now and then I'll get it and drive it around. And what it reminds me of is just being in that Metro in the early 90s and the struggle, and just to see where I am now, it's really a beautiful thing.
When did you realize on this journey that you needed to have control over the work that you did?
That was always from the beginning, and it wasn't necessarily about control as much as it was about ownership.
Okay.
My father, built houses for a living. He would make $800, and the man who owned the house would sell it and make $80,000. So I realized very early on that the owner had the power. So I wanted to be the owner of it, so I could dictate when it was finished and how I would sell it and so on and so forth. And I think the control came with the ownership.
Because I'm going to look down to read some of these accomplishments now. You're running one of the biggest production studios in America. It's got your name on it. You bought a massive military base near Atlanta. You converted it into your production hub, an airport, a mall, a near exact replica of the White House on it. You own the rights to everything you create. Not to be crass or anything or gauche, but your wealth is estimated at more than $1 billion. You famously loaned your house in California to Meghan and Harry after they were cut off by the royal family. Was there a moment you were able to stop and say, Wow, I did it.
I think the first moment I realized that things were different is when I was leaving The Color Purple, the premiere, and Tina Turner, Oprah Winfrey, they were all leaving. Oprah goes out there screaming for Oprah, Oprah, Oprah. Tina goes out, says, Tina, Tina, Tina. And I'm letting them get out of the way. And I walk out and I hear, Tyler, Tyler, Tyler. When I heard those names together, I go, whoa, something shifted in my life. So that was the first moment I realized something was different. Yeah.
So why is it important to remember, why is it important to get back into that Geo Metro? Because a lot of people would say, oh, okay, now I'm going to go on to bigger and better things. It's not every day I talk to someone who wants to get back in that old car and be reminded of something.
I don't ever want to forget that. I don't want to forget the struggle. I don't want to forget the path, because it took all of that to get here. And I think that sometimes people want to run so far away from where they came from that they don't even realize the beauty in the struggle and the pain and the struggle. So taking those moments to reflect on how far I've come lets me know, like, whoa, you did all of that. How much further do you want to go? If you've come this far from that moment, there's probably a whole nother 30, 40-year journey out there that could be much better. So where's your choice? So let's take a ride in this Metro so you can remember what this felt like, you know?
The thing about that, Tyler, is I'm so inspired by your ability, and someone who works in sort of the creative world, there's just so much noise coming in at you all the time. People telling you, no, I want to do this. No, that's not how things are. This is how things are. Oh, I want to talk to this audience. That audience doesn't exist. They don't talk to that audience. Do you have some perspective on how to avoid the noise?
No, because the noise is always going to be there. But I can tell you how to not focus on the noise.
Yeah.
Because for me, I set a goal. What is the goal? Where do I want to be? Where 5, 10, 20 years? Where do I want to be? The goal was a studio. The goal was everything I have now. I didn't know it would be to this degree, but I did know this is where I wanted to go. And I only did things that served that. No matter what the noise said, no matter what anybody said, I only focused on everything that would serve where I was trying to go. It's like getting directions to go somewhere. And somebody says, turn left, turn right, go 2 miles, turn right again, watch that, we'll turn a tree, right? All that stuff is there for you to pay attention to. So for me, wherever my destination is, I'm only going to take the directions to get there, no matter what the noise says. Follow the directions to get to your goal.
Where does that come from in you? Because say if I'm taking let's keep that analogy going. If I'm taking a Google Maps route and I know, hey, I want to get to this place by the end of it, but the person in the car is saying, I think you should take a left. The person in the back is saying, you know what, you might want to turn around here. There's a part of all of us, I think, that doubts it and will start to want to listen to it because it might be easier, it might be less scary. Where does that come from in you to know how to stay on that path?
Listen, I've always had tremendous faith, and I call it my God voice. No matter what people are saying outside, this voice inside of me that I've had since I was a kid, I call it the voice of God, has always led me to follow it. It's like, don't do that. Don't, like, even when lawyers and finance people were saying, don't do this, don't do that, you shouldn't do it. I felt very strongly I should, and those were always the right decisions. And every time I went against that feeling, that voice, that thing that's in me, I found myself in some really bad situations. So I've learned how to just surrender to it. No matter what people are saying in the passenger seat or in the back seat, I'm still driving and we're going.
Yeah, and to focus on hearing it, like to know, to trust that it's real and that you're hearing it.
That you actually are hearing it, but the only way to hear it is in stillness and quiet, because all of these other voices out there can really drown it out, including your own.
Yeah, including your own, in your own anxiety and your own doubt.
Yeah. Right.
So how do you differentiate between those voices?
Because it has to line up with what I feel. Like, right. Do I feel like this is the right direction? Do I feel, even if it feels like I'm afraid of it, like it's too big, it's too much, I feel a pulling toward to do it. That's been my whole life.
What are you the most proud of now that we can take a second here and look back in the career so far?
Oh, what I'm most proud of is my 7-year-old son. It's the last 7 years of his life. Just everything about this kid is magical to me. So he's the most proud. But if you're talking career-wise, I think it's got to be my ability to help people, especially people of color who have not had an opportunity to do some of the things that they've done. I mean, if you look at some of the people that I've worked with, from Idris Elba and Viola Davis and Taraji P. Henson and Kerry Washington and Sofia Vergara, all of these people who came through my doors when they were, on their way up, that makes me feel great that I was able to be some sort of catalyst for a lot of people to get better gigs.
And am I wrong that this studio, this flagship studio that you've built, is on a former Confederate Civil War stronghold? Is that right?
Yes, it was a Confederate Army base during the Civil War, and yeah, imagine the poetic justice in that, right? They're fighting to keep 3 million Negroes enslaved in America, and now it's owned by me. Same land.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. Before we go, how does Madea, we talked about the Geo Metro, but how does Madea keep you grounded after all these years?
First of all, being a 6'6" man in that costume, that's pretty humbling. That's pretty damn humbling, to say the least. I mean, to see myself in it and go, what are you thinking every day? But also the wisdom that she carries, or the wisdom of the women that I grew up with. So it's always in the back of my head, and I'll never forget what they taught me and how they taught me.
Tyler, it was such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.